All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks so much for joining. You're at this point, the group is we've got everyone on mute, but we will when we get into Q&A later, we'll get going with that. My name is Frank Moses. I'm the executive director with the Skaneateles Lake Association. I'm just going to give it a few more moments. We have over 100 folks registered for this afternoon, which is wonderful. We can join and gather from wherever everyone is. I see some folks that are joining locally, some folks from down south, but glad we can collect and convene on this lovely February afternoon. And it looks like we've got a great group joining already. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and get into a couple of housekeeping announcements. But before I do that, just wanted to say thanks for taking some time out of your day today. Looking forward to this. We haven't done one of these in a while, probably since the pandemic, to connect in this degree. So looking forward to this. Let's see if we can get this started from the beginning. The latest on the lake. And just a couple housekeeping things on some functions. We are doing questions at the end. If I've got some experts on hand, I see some around already, I may unmute to help during Q&A. But you can use that chat function on your control bar. If you're not seeing that, there is a more button that hopefully you'll see that depending on the last time you updated your Zoom. Some of these icons do tend to look differently. They certainly changed on me, but there is under React. We'll try doing raise hand at the end, and I'll unmute folks if we want to. We'll look at chat questions, and then we'll do raise hand, and I'll unmute your audio, and we'll get going with that. Just a little bit of an overview of today. We'll do a 101 about Skaneateles Lake. I'm sure I can continue to learn a lot more from most online today. A little bit about our association history, a little bit timeline, overall threats to the lake, some core lake protection programs, some updates from this past year in 2024, and a little bit of where we're headed for the future. And then if there's time, I did want to kind of showcase one of our projects we did a couple years ago, but just to do a walkthrough of what these meaningful projects, what it takes to see them happen and bring to fruition. So just a little bit of snapshot of Skaneateles Lake. We'll also be sending out a resource document with different links. So I could be loading up different links in the chat and you could be copying and pasting, but we're just going to send an email to all the folks that registered with a copy of the recording of this afternoon's presentation, and also some of these various links. This is a great one. River Runner gives you a sense of where our water goes after it's come into Skaneateles Lake, where it flows out Skaneateles Creek and then joins into the Seneca River. And a lot of folks ask about, lake levels and what can we do when the lake's so high. And there's only so much dam discharge that can happen here at the north end of Skaneateles, and then we're beholden to the capacity at the Baldwinsville Dam. And then when it gets into Lake Ontario, we're all connected, and that's when it really gets into the mayor of Montreal's hands of whether the floodgates could be open. So just in those flood situations, we do have some control and work for flood resilience, which we'll talk about this evening on some of the projects. But beyond that, we are connected into a whole nother system. But we do want to see, can we be more preemptive with floods and when we know the rains are coming. A little bit about our elevation. We are one of the highest elevated lakes in the Finger Lakes, especially the Eastern Finger Lakes. And this gives a sense that most of the water coming into Skaneateles Lake is rainwater. And we have a very small watershed that helps keep it clean. But we are learning from geologists, and we're still learning, are there rivers that run below and are connected? There's still more to learn about that, specifically with Skaneateles. but this is a nice profile. It's not, it's from a tourism website. I haven't seen a full profile of the Finger Lakes image yet. So this might not be entirely accurate, but it's a good representation of to show that we have great. We're considered. I don't know anybody who's referred to this, but I've seen, if you go to Wikipedia, Skaneateles has been known as the rooftop garden, which helps me remind me that, again, we're receiving mostly rainwaters, and that's one of the reasons we've got low nutrients. Just a couple stats about the depth and the volume of the lake that most folks might know already, and a little bit of the history of Skaneateles Lake being a water supply for the city of Syracuse, village of Skaneateles, parts of the town of Skaneateles, and then surrounding areas around the city of Syracuse. Generally about over 200,000 water customers that are supported by Skaneateles Lake. And just another stat about our watershed. One that's very significant in mind is this watershed to lake ratio, this 4.3 to 1. That means for every 1 square foot of surface area of the actual lake, there's about 4.3 square feet or acres of land. And that's a very important fact where for when we're creating solutions to help with flood resilience on the land, anything we can do to improve the land, we've got a great opportunity to move the needle further. So there's so bad things can go further, but good things can go further as well. And comparatively, I believe Owasco Lake is about a 10 to 1. But if anyone wants to correct me on that stat in terms of land to water. The other significance is if we're learning that nutrients are actually coming in directly from raindrops. This is another thing that Charlie Driscoll from Syracuse University has been studying of what could be loading into the lake directly, and that significant surface area of the lake does come into play in a small watershed. A little more stats about our demographics and land use. These stats of land use can change from year to year. We are seeing more development going up and forest remaining starting to diminish, but also agriculture remaining steady through the years as well. And getting into the meat and potatoes of what we're concerned about. So for any freshwater body, I've put the different threats into about 3 buckets. One is our chemical pollutants, and we're hearing a lot about these per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, or PFAs and PFOAs. There's a lot going on in New York State. The good news is we've received reports from the city of Syracuse from studies they've done. They've looked at monitoring the past year where the levels of PFAs have been negligible or non-detect. So that's great, but we're going to continue to study and continue to do outreach, making sure we're aware of what's going down our drains into the waters. So that's one thing. We're just looking at what can we do about these forever chemicals. Right now, it's consumer awareness, being knowing what's on our clothing, going through the laundry if we're on septic, and knowing what's going down the drain, what's washing off our driveways, and making responsible choices, what we're bringing into the environment. Invasive species. These are not all the invasive species on Skaneateles Lake, but certainly some that we're very involved in managing. Hemlock woolly adelgid, Eurasian water milfoil. This can just change the ecosystem drastically if you've got hemlock woolly adelgid killing our hemlock trees, the milfoil taking over the waters, and our big concern of hydrilla being in Cayuga Lake, and also the economic concerns of hydrilla, where it's been millions of dollars spent since hydrilla has been noted on Cayuga and being managed by Army Corps of Engineers and other municipalities and departments of health. The one not on here, zebra and quagga mussels, these little tiny clams. That's also a concern that's gotten into Skaneateles Lake that becomes a factor when we're looking at how they could impact harmful algal blooms as well. And then our third threat, and noting climate change as being a major driver, for some of these threats, especially we see more plants of the invasives on warmer waters. Our job controlling and managing that is much more challenging during those prolific years. But also when it comes to nutrient or this phosphorus and nitrogen loading into the lake, seeing more intense storms, the warmer the atmosphere, the more clouds can handle more moisture, and then they can drop it, where we'll see these gully gushers with chocolate milk dropping inches of rain per hour, that we've got to look at solutions for more flood resilience down the line. So that's the nutshell of the major threats. Here's more just an example of when the human element making decisions and choices that can go wrong and cause more damage to adding to more nutrients. And I'm not as familiar of the chemical pollutants, like the forever chemicals relationship. There's not a lot of research and science about PFAs and the pharmaceuticals and microplastics, how they are related to algal blooms, but certainly the changing ecosystem with invasives, especially with the zebra quagga mussels I mentioned, where they can selectively eat harmful algal bloom, or excuse me, not eat algal blooms. They'll eat the good algae and then selectively not eat the harmful algal blooms. So it helps them compete. They've also, the mussels, these little clams, have also changed how readily available the nitrogen and phosphorus can be for the algal blooms. For folks that aren't familiar with, I would imagine this community is very familiar, and as we've seen good reaction to awareness about algal blooms, but it is cyanobacteria that has some toxins in it. It's been around for billions of years, but we're seeing some changes in the past 20 years with the lake getting warmer and different changes, that we are concerned about recreational exposure to these toxins in cyanobacteria that we've been monitoring for these algal blooms. So a little bit of a background there, and where we're working. So that's kind of leads into what are we going to do about these threats, lends itself to the Skaneateles Lake Association, our role and our mission in lake protection. And it certainly there's a little bit of a history. We were first established in 1969, went through various name changes. Eurasian water milfoil was first discovered in the 1970s. That's not on here, but between 2001 and 2006, we surveyed with the city of Syracuse to see whether it was a problem. 2006, it was determined, yes, it is a problem, and that's when 2007, we started the Eurasian water milfoil control program. I'll talk a little bit about our 2024 efforts on that. And then in 2012, Dr. Buzz Roberts and team got together and said, boy, we better make sure no new invasives are getting in the lake. So we better be checking boats and establish our aquatic invasive species boat steward program in 2012. And then things really changed in 2017 when the lake had its first lake-wide harmful algal bloom, and that really changed a lot of our programming for the Lake Association and what our strategies are for that. Wanted to recognize our leadership with the Lake Association. A lot of folks' names you may recognize. If you see them around, please thank them for their volunteership, working diligently to look at the best strategies in our role of being a hub for water quality with all of our lake protection partners. Wanted to welcome and our newest board members, Ellen Donovan, Linda Roach, and Ben Eberhardt. If you see them, welcome, say thank you for raising their hand and being part of our team. along with all these other wonderful individuals that I've gotten to know and really brought me in as part of a family to this lake. So can't be more thankful. We do have some staff that's seasonal and working. Marty Minette is our lead steward at the boats with quite a few, over a dozen boat steward staff in the summer, and Kevin Donnelly, who's really been a champion on the water with our Dr. Robert Werner Research and Education vessel. And then we have some support, independent contracting support through aquatic invasives with John Menapace of what he's doing for milfoil control. Sistina Honold, who's helping with our communications and social media, website development, and then Larry Jerome, who's helping with our fund development, which is we're realizing we need to be upping our game for that and raising more resources to answer to the threats of this lake. Beyond the Lake Association, we have many of our municipal partners where we're working watershed-wide with. We have the Village of Skaneateles, 5 different towns, and 3 counties around the lake with a variety of professionals and municipal leaders that help propel our mission and continue to protect the lake. But one thing is that a lot of these towns are in other watersheds, helping with other lakes. One thing that's significant to the Lake Association, we are the only sole not-for-profit, the only not-for-profit that's solely dedicated to just Skaneateles Lake. And so we're looking at how can we be a hub to bringing in different partners and working at advancing the needs for this lake. Here's another bit of a NASCAR set of logos of a variety of folks that we're working with to protect Skaneateles, but also protect the Finger Lakes and areas beyond, working together. And so what are we doing with our community partners? I think the best example is right now it's in draft is this 9-element clean water plan that I hope the community's relatively aware of the efforts with that. This started, I think, I want to say 2018 as a response to the 2017 harmful algal bloom, where we learned about this 9-element plans after meetings with the DEC, and the Lake Association put up funds to support Upstate Freshwater Institute monitoring our 4 biggest tributaries, streams on the lake, Shotwell Brook, Harold Brook, Grout Brook, and Bear Swamp. And so that study helped go into initiating this 9-element plan, and wanted to thank the Central Regional Planning Development Board, the town of Skaneateles for being partners with that, and the DEC and Department of State for putting, especially the state, putting in taking our match funds and leveraging that to go into quite a large investment through the years of state funds to go through scientific modeling, but coming up with best practices. This plan pragmatically does 2 things. It's something for our partners to coalesce around and focus on together. And then it's a checkbox of when we're applying for these federal and state funds of allowing us to compete at a higher level by referring to this Cadillac of a plan. There's all different types of clean water plans. The 9-element is the paramount plan that if you check the box saying, we're applying for this best practice for flood resilience, and it's in our approved plan, which we hope to see get approved very soon this year. It's in comment period with the DEC, and so we're anticipating later this summer to have that come to fruition. A little bit about our lake protection partners. I know I'm 18 minutes in, so I want to be mindful of time too. So we can leave time for questions. But the city of Syracuse, certainly with its rules and regs, I just grabbed one example of one of the rules and regulations related to exposed soil. But the city of Syracuse has jurisdiction over the whole watershed. So anybody living and working and doing projects on their land do need to adhere to this, be familiar with it. And there are site plan reviews. And then there's also the municipalities that have their codes and regulations as well, supporting the lake. But the city of Syracuse, Karen, because we are have a filtration avoidance waiver that tethers the city to looking at the entire watershed to make sure that there's less of that chocolate milk getting in the water, good water quality for drinking water. The New York State Department of Health has given them the jurisdiction because of that filtration avoidance waiver as well for the whole watershed. If they had to have a treatment facility, that could change. We don't, we hope that there's great efforts to maintain that filtration avoidance waiver. The Skaneateles Lake Watershed Agricultural Program is, I still have not seen anything like it in terms of what the city's doing with the 3 soil water conservation districts. It is managed by Mark Berger, who's the program director for the and he's also the executive director of the Onondaga County Soil and Water, and works with folks from Cayuga County and Cortland County Soil and Water, and all the farms going through doing whole farm planning, helping them get the technical support and best practices to reduce the impacts of our farming activities around the lake, but also doing great projects between the farms and the lake. Right now, they're working on a shot well project on Pork Street to install yet another wetland with some public funds that are attached to a member item that the Lake Association got involved with guiding. So we're looking forward to seeing more wetlands through that. That's just one example. And then we have great land protection partners. With the city of Syracuse, their historical easements, Finger Lakes Land Trust, which is also working on a procurement they just closed on some properties on Shotwell, making improvements there. DEC, certainly Carpenter's Falls, Bear Swamp Forest area has a lot of public lands to the south, and then the Central New York Land Trust. Just a FYI, the Central New York Land Trust is looking for a new executive director. So if you know anyone good, please send them our way, because we could use all the help with great professionals. So that's just the FYI news there. And then getting into a bit of the past year with the Skaneateles Lake Association, just an overview, talking about our outreach, research and monitoring, invasive species, and watershed improvement projects. And then I will touch on some additional areas we want to expand upon this year. So just a snapshot. I'm gonna move through this as best I can. Had a great program, Libraries Love Lakes, with the Skaneateles Library. Our volunteers, Deb Tift and Deb Hull, engaging with youth, but also Bill Dean bringing out, and Kevin Donnelly bringing out the Bob, our Dr. Robert Werner Research and Education boat, and getting the youth to understand what it means to care for a lake and some of the issues with it, but also getting their hands dirty and doing some hands-on education. Very excited to be working with Mid Lakes on doing educational tours with the youth, and we're looking to do more with the community moving ahead this year. Had some great programs with the Scouts, different school groups this past year, doing some hands-on activities. On the far right here, you can see maybe a little bit, just there on a laptop, there's some blue squigglies, if you can see them, but that's, we're showcasing how we've got some data collection equipment in the engine room that has a sensor that's reading off what the water is being pulled in to cool the engine, and looking at different data points like temperature, how cloudy the water is, how dirty it is, does it have algae in it, Looking at chlorophyll, are there algal blooms in it? We're still fine tuning that, so we're looking forward to getting that shared with the community in the future, but it's a great educational component to show our youth as well currently until we get the equipment fine tuned for research integrity. We did a few different forums. This was one we actually worked with Cornell Cooperative Extension on at Baltimore Woods because they had a example of meadows right outside a nice program area. This is Sam Quinn with ESF talking about the Lawn to Meadow program, working to encourage more deep-rooted plant programs, shifting from those short rooted turf lawns to more meadows. Whoops. And I'll keep going through. We had a boater education course. We'll be doing more of those this year. This was our first one, but Brianna's Law is in full effect this year, where every New Yorker will have to take in a boater safety course. So we look forward to getting more dates scheduled in 2025. Congrats to Deb Hole, who got the highest score in the class. And this is Tess Friedman working on knots, and I believe that's Nigel that joined the program, but going to do more of that. And then this year we got out the Community Guide to Lake-Friendly Living as an introduction to all the things that we can do and make changes, whether we're living, working, or playing in the watershed. And we mailed out about 3,000 of these to the community. It was definitely a challenge to get addresses within the entire watershed, but we hope that you received a copy. If you didn't, certainly send us an email, let us know, and we'll get one in the mail to you. But this is just an introduction, but we're going to be diving deeper along the way on ways we can all take care of the lake together. Getting into research and monitoring, we initiated working with Finger Lakes Institute and the Finger Lakes PRISM program, Hobart Williams Smith, on doing some training on aquatic plant surveys, throwing rakes into the water and seeing what native and invasive plants where our volunteers would take a photo of what they got and then send the reports into Finger Lakes Institute. And we're hoping to have more volunteers doing that so we can see the change over time throughout a growing season and also have a sense of what's going on. And thank goodness we did this, because we had one of the volunteers actually discovered we had water chestnut. It was the first sighting of water chestnut in Skaneateles Lake. It was just one. We got it out of there, so hopefully that's all squared away and set. But we'll be keeping an eye out to make sure a plant like that doesn't continue to spread and grow. The Dr. Robert Werner Research and Education Boat, the Bob, has been a host to Syracuse University, ESF, different school groups. Again, thanks for all the support from our community that got behind our fabrication of this. Dr. Bill Dean, John Menapace, and others that got into the development of this boat. But it's been a true joy, but also been producing a lot of great work in looking at how the lake's water clarity. On the left, we had Dr. Chris Schultz, Charlie Driscoll, doing sediment core sampling with grad student PhD candidate Mackenzie Brannon. And then on the right, we had Dr. Bahram Salehi's crew looking at machine learning of taking water data that's collected off the boat in the field, and then feeding that data into satellites to look at, can we get a sense of how clear our water is. And they've been looking at all the citizen state lake-wide assessment program data and looking at, we've got great clarity of the water, but to see through satellites, can we do this so it's not as onerous on doing more field data. And then they're also looking into using drones for aerial imagery to help better monitor our lakes as well. This is this past summer, the Bob also supported gathering some seed data. This is just a short run of getting some they had a multi-beam echo sounder doing bathymetric mapping, basically sonar, doing lake bottom mapping and looking at just like on land, before we do any projects, you have to get a survey. You have to survey the land before you can look to make improvements and where you make changes. This is absolutely a need, working with Dr. Chris Schultz to see if we can get this bathymetric mapping at this level that can give us a better look at the lake bottom for monitoring and solutions and knowing how much, are we seeing more sediment loaded out of one mouth of a stream more than others based on the lake bottom? Is that changing over the years? There's so much that that type of mapping is just helpful for any in-lake type solutions for the future. So looking forward to that. And then, of course, the monitoring of harmful algal blooms. This past year was horrendous. I'll just say it. The lake's the warmest I've ever known it to be. And we had a very long season. It's the earliest algal bloom we've seen on record for the lake back in July in terms of since we've been recording and reporting. So it's been the longest season that really affected quality of life, concerns for recreational exposure to it. But it also is an indicator. If you see, we had 145, the DEC noted 149, but I know 4 of those were duplicates where I sent in multiples of that. But what we're looking at now is how many active days did we have, with the blooms. And that's really when we see we had more of the public being aware, that's observation bias, seeing more of these observations. And this is probably show you an indicator of that uptick. This is looking at how many HAB reports we had since 2019. And where, 2022, we had 9. And part of that indicator is more folks know what they're looking for. And we take that as a sense of pride that we spent a lot of time communicating when there were algal blooms out this past year. And we're glad that most folks know what it's like, looks like, and that they know how to report it. Great, moving along. I know it's 4:30, but so protecting Skaneateles Lake. I see, Paul, are you waving? Okay, Paul, I'll unmute you. Is everything going okay technically? Nobody can hear or see? Okay. Let's see if I can unmute. Go ahead, Paul. You should be able to unmute now.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Frank. Can you hear me?
That's okay.
Yeah, but there's about 60 people who can't get in. They're in the waiting room.
Okay, that's really important.
I don't know if can we do anything about that now?
Yes, I can. My research didn't work well. That's really important. Thank you, Paul. And we'll make sure we get a recording out. I hit admit all, which I was told that once you hit it, I shouldn't have to do it again. And Paul, if you want to, thanks for that note. Want to put yourself on mute, that'd be great. But if there's anything else, you should be able to chime in. I'm not seeing an uptick in participants. My apologies for those just coming in. Looks like we had a technical issue there. See if we can. I hit admit all, so hopefully we'll be okay. If not, we'll make sure we get a recording out. Let me get back to the current slide. Okay. I'm going to button up too, but I did want to keep reporting. So Moving on to our invasive species, we checked 7,484 boats this year. And there were 627 detections of invasive species, which also was boats going in and coming out of the lake. So we're looking at that, and more granularly, to get a sense of what's coming from the boats. But we do see that most boats coming from any other lake are coming from Cayuga Lake. And that's where we're concerned about hydrilla. So we're, flagging and making sure that there's nothing on the boats going through when the boat stewards are there. Where our milfoil control operations continues to be robust. This is a nice shot of our aging infrastructure of our milfoil boat. We are looking into advancing and enhancing our fleet in the future, but it's still going strong. You've got some divers that are working. It's very labor intensive, but allows us to continue to not have to use chemicals to work at controlling the Eurasian water milfoil through this benthic matting you can see that helps, that gets put out for about 8 weeks. And then after the season, we go around in the research vessel and we look to see where there's more invasive species and plants. A lot of curly leaf pondweed to the north. We're looking into what could be done if that continues to be a larger issue. But mostly it's the milfoil program we're looking at. And then we send those data points to aquatic invasives to continue to do the matting the next year. So this past year, we used over 6 acres of this matting. 325 total mats were placed using 7 different divers. This is all of our invasive species prevention and control is about $250,000 annually, mostly supported through our membership. So thank you to all those that have been part of our members. We could use more membership moving along. So appreciate your efforts on that to help get your neighbors involved and continue to support what we're doing here. Hemlock woolly adelgid has been, you see these ghost trees, these grade trees that are just killing our forests. So Dr. Buzz Roberts has been volunteering a lot of time working with private vendors like Zeb Strickland to get out and work with private landowners thank you for all the landowners that raised their hand, said, yes, please come protect and treat the trees where we've identified the different priority areas, which are the steep ravines and along the shorelines, because it's our strategy to make sure we're protecting these hemlock trees from this sap-sucking hemlock woolly adelgid that really literally sucks the life out of the hemlocks. We are going to have a presentation with New York State Hemlock Initiative more in depth on this. That's hosted by the Cornell Cooperative Extension that will give some updates to this. There's a great PBS story on the effort. If you just use your favorite browser and put in On the Money, Tech Bites, hemlock, and this should come up. But we'll share that as well on the resource page. And then here's a snapshot of all the different trees we've been and the amount of trees that we've been treating through the years and our commitment to the hemlock forests and some of the areas too. It's really just almost the southern half, if not southern 1/3 of the lake that we've been focusing on. Again, these steep ravines, because if we lose the hemlocks, it's that soil, those gully gushers, that chocolate milk's going to keep eroding, and those roots from those trees will not protect those ravines during those storms. So we're being extremely aggressive because we have not seen any hemlock trees, and this is anecdotal, but we have yet to find hemlock forests and trees that don't have the hemlock woolly adelgid unless they've been treated. But we are seeing good success there. Our restoration science, the Restoration Science Center, the Lawn to Meadow program, we're continuing to do, working with ESF on promoting deeper roots and switching over to turf lawns. This is an overseeding project that was done down on Grout Brook this past year that we're looking at some critical areas, but mainly looking at what does it mean if we have deeper roots between homes and the lake? What can that do to reduce nutrients from getting in the lake? We worked with Lourdes Camp and helped subsidize a project that worked with the Fish and Wildlife Service on 10 Mile Creek to provide some stabilization. And we instituted a shared private road drainage improvement fund that's a matching grant up to 10,000. It's a limited budget that we have, so it's kind of once that's gone for the year, we decide whether we can put more funds to it. But if you have a project that's $20,000 or more in a shared private road community, that'll allow for 10,000 to be matched. And then this is just, I'm going to breeze through and then we'll shift to some outreach and education. Questions and answers. And this is the Willow Creek project, one of our watershed improvement projects. We looked at some of the data to see where some of the loading was, but we also looked at this was close to the city of Syracuse's water intake. So we determined it was a high priority site, worked with Anchor QEA engineers and looking at some solutions at the lower part of putting in some root wads and stabilization and increasing the flood bench area. This is a profile of the root wads we were put in, some examples of during construction to ensure that there was not a lot of these nutrients going to the lake. And then so here's some examples of the root wads during construction, sediment control, and then the completion of the project. And we're working with Upstate Freshwater Institute to see how well we can monitor it. This is the upper part of Willow Creek, where during high flow storms, it actually diverts out of the stream. This is known as an offline detention basin, but it's basically adding more kidneys into the system where the sediment-filled chocolate milk would flow into a wetland area to settle out and then come back into the stream. But it's all about capturing more nutrients and getting more of these projects. And that's really where we want to go moving in the future, looking at more projects like this that have high value. Again, this is Upstate Freshwater Institute looking at monitoring. And we haven't seen their data results, just had phone conversations, but the preliminary data that they've noted is that they are seeing good positive results, that the water is cleaner and our investments are working. We're also looking at more community science. This is related to the Shotwell area of working with landowners to monitor the streams and get a high frequency of data to measure clarity. There's a great special report that gets into more depth about this, and then really looking at what's ahead. Are we going to do more improvement projects? And we're going to have an addition on septic enhancement, because we know that the septic that can get into the lake, the nutrients that are there are more readily available for these algal blooms. So yes, we're going to do more of that. Are we going to do more hemlock tree protection moving forward? Yes, we are. We're going to do more of that. Are we doing more invasive species prevention and control? Absolutely. Going to continue to do that. Are we going to do more research and monitoring and engage more of our community to do more citizen science? Absolutely going to do more of that moving this year. Are we going to do more outreach and education? Yes, and we're looking more to do some community education programs on the Judge Ben Wiles, so there'll be more news about that, not only for youth, but to get the community out on the water to enjoy what's going on and what the efforts are. And are we going to continue to work with our partners? Absolutely. We can't do this alone. We have to look at leveraging our teamwork and working with these wonderful professionals and our counties and state and other not-for-profit organizations working hard at caring for this lake. And what we need to raise the volume of our voice. So when we're having meetings with the state and other powers that be, we want to be able to say, I'm here representing 5,000 members. We're at about 1,000 now. I know that's aggressive, but maybe can we get to 1,500 this year? But we want to continue to raise the volume of our voice. And it's not about the dollars, which do help and propel our mission, but it's also the individuals that are behind us that give us that strength in numbers. It's seeing that there's more landowners wanting to take a small leap of faith to make changes to their land and start to put these different practices into play to care for the lake. Do we need more financial support? Yes, we're working on fund development. So there'll be more coming out to the community this year later on, and then looking at more of these public-private partnerships. And that's it. I've probably gone over my time, but I'm definitely going to open things up, see if I can. I'm going to have to apologize. I'm not sure why I was able to admit a certain amount of folks and then not another amount. So we'll have to. I'm not sure why I clicked admit all and it's not working. So my apologies. I'll have to send a message out to folks and we'll figure out what happened there. With that, I'll open up to the group and look at in the chat. Other than Frank, others can't seem to get into the call. Lots of folks calling in unable to access Zoom. So I'm not sure why half the group got in and others can't. So it's a mystery to me right now, but we'll send our apologies out to folks. But it looks like we've got a great group here. Feel free to put your questions in the chat. Anybody want to raise their hand? I'll go ahead and unmute. Or I'll just, considering there's 43 of us, I'm just going to actually allow everybody to unmute at this point. Bob Dean, you want to go ahead and unmute? Everybody should be able to unmute at this point. No. Let me try that again.
Yeah, that worked.
Great. Bob, still can't hear you.
All right, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah.
I can.
Well, Bob, okay, Bob, go ahead.
Yeah. My question is, does anybody have records on how oftentimes our Skaneateles Lake has frozen over completely, or the years that happened?
So the question is, do we have records of historically which years the lake has iced over? I'm not sure if there's a comprehensive record, but that's a really important question. That is one thing that we're anticipating that we should see unless there's major
Rich,
storms.
Frank, I'm pretty sure Rich Abbott has that record, Bob. And
Okay.
traditionally, it's been said that the whole lake freezes about every 10 years. That's what I've always heard. And in fact, it froze 2 years in a row in 2015 and 2016, I think it was, where the entire lake froze 2 years in a row. And I think that's the last time it froze.
Yeah, and as I was starting to say, what we're looking forward to is hopefully some respite from the warmth of the waters, not seeing as many invasives growing as much this year, and hopefully an algal bloom season that doesn't start as early, and we don't see as high frequency unless there's some weird tropical storms and other factors like no wind, which we saw this past year. Paul,
Frank, I have a question on the city of Syracuse. Any word on the status of their filtration avoidance waiver? I know they were on probation and they were appealing to the state health department. And the second part of that question is, are they in fact extending the one intake out this year? Have you heard anything about that? Because it was supposed to take place next fall.
Yes. So the first question being, the city still has the filtration avoidance waiver. And the second, they did have some thresholds that the amount of turbidity or cloudiness of the water went above, and is putting that at risk. But they do still have it. And then related to the pipe extension, Upstate Freshwater Institute has been monitoring and gathering data, and the city wants to ensure that the pipe extension will help their cause of seeing less turbidity events and cleaner water. And they want to make sure that the data is telling them that, before they, pull the trigger on the investment.
Thank you.
Frank, do you know if there are any incentives for landowners to replace lawn with wildflower meadows?
Right now, I know our program that we're working with ESF, we are investing in their time to work with landowners. And then if there are some significant projects, I think the Lake Association would consider some support, but I'm not sure of state programs for that specifically. But there are there's definitely technical support for that, and possibly some support for purchasing the plants.
Yeah, I was thinking if there was any direction on where I can get seed in serious bulk. Doing it by going to Lowe's or Ace Hardware is not going to work on this much land area.
Yeah. We can, Nigel, I'm happy to put you in touch with Sam Quinn at ESF on that.
Okay.
They would provide that guidance for sure.
All right, thanks.
So got a question in the chat. Are there any specific programs like milfoil abatement or boat inspection stewards where you need volunteers? Yes, we could use volunteers. We do pay our stewards checking for that, but yes, we do have inspection steward programs that we have paid seasonal staff, but there might be some support we could use for monitoring, and always open to volunteers for any of the efforts. And then I've got a question of what streams are next in line for remediation to reduce sediment and nutrients reaching the lake. I think the simple answer is that what we've heard through the Clean Water Plan 9-element process is that anything that could be done anywhere on Skaneateles Lake because of the small watershed would be helpful for this lake. But that said, we also have looking at a rubric in our decision making of where we could get the biggest bang for the buck in terms of where the opportunities are, and looking at least the data we have of these secondary streams at Syracuse University. I mentioned Upstate Freshwater Institute helped look at the 4 major tributaries, one of them being Harold Brook we mentioned. Shotwell's getting a lot of attention right now, so there's lots of projects involved there. Harold Brook has some potential, but the other secondary stream that has been high on our list has been Fisher Brook, and maybe that's where you're leaning towards, Dana.
It is, Frank. Yes, thanks.
Where and when were water chestnuts found in the lake? This past summer, it was one, and it was about, I want to say 3 miles or so down on the east side. And I can give you the exact GPS location on that, Dave, but oddly it was near Snow Creek, so not too far off. Whether it came down through a stream or just loosened off a boat, we're not sure how it got in, where it got in, but I think the closest heavy boating area might be the Skaneateles Sailing Club. But I'm not going to point any fingers. It's a very non-point source to be able to tell where exactly something came from, because these little nutlets can float along the water. Could have come in down from the south in Scott and floated, and just that's where it got blown in during a windstorm. But we're going to continue to keep an eye on it. Okay, so I've got another anonymous question of, have we considered working with authorities for a mileage supplement that might sunset in 10 years to help the lake with this period of adjustment? Millage supplement. Maybe I'm not following that question as much. I'm not interpreting that question correctly. Great. Any other questions? Feel free. I think folks should be able to unmute their if you hit the audio, if you want to ask questions in person too. Great. Any questions about invasives, improvement projects, anything else? I know we're heading into the rest of the hour. I apologize for the technical difficulty where we're missing folks. We'll have to get messages out about that. But wanted to thank everyone this evening for joining in. My email I'll put back up. If I can share that. If there's any questions, feel free to shoot them along the way. And if I don't know the answer, we've got a lot of great folks that can help. Actually, I'll maybe put that in the chat too.
I've got a voter safety question.
Oh, go ahead, Forrest.
What is the law? I see various things on this, that there are age exemptions, but is it a New York State requirement now that everybody who operates a boat
Yes.
has
So
an education certificate for that?
that's right. So New York State, it's Brianna's law that they phased in. There's where they started, if you're born between this years, you have to take it, born between these years, you have to take it. But as soon as 2025 hit, it, regardless of your age, every New Yorker has to take a boater safety course. Now, if you've taken a safety course historically, and the state has record, or you have record of it, you only have to take it once.
And I understand they can be taken online. So
Yes, and we will host them in person, because it's nice for if you want to bring your grandkids and have that hands-on experience. It's great, but yes, you can also take it online at your own time too.
you have a schedule yet on when you're going to be offering it?
We're shooting for May before the boating season, but I've got to talk with Tess Friedman at America's Boating, and we hope to have a full calendar of events. And but we're hoping before Labor Day, if not shortly after. Excuse me, Memorial Day weekend, if not shortly after.
Good, thank you.
Great. Thanks everyone for your support. I'm happy to get a recording of this, send out some extra links, and we'll forward that on to folks who, for some odd reason, I'll have to, get into that, figure out why they couldn't get in.
Thanks, Frank.
Well, thank you. Thanks for all the support of the lake, and looking forward to seeing everybody this summer.
Thank you for the good presentation.
Same here.
Yep, my
Thank
email's
you.
yeah, my email's frank.moses@skaneateleslake.org. And I'll put it up on the screen if folks want to grab that before heading out. Happy to help get answers if I can't help answer it myself. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Still on.